Thinking hurts. It hurts because it forces us to confront what we would rather avoid. It forces us to look within with honesty. Thinking is diving into the depths of one's own consciousness and finding within it the records of pain, guilt, loss, wrong decisions, and absences that echo like open wounds. For many, thinking is not a simple intellectual exercise, but a crossing between shadows, memories, and responsibilities. Still, it is necessary. And more than necessary, it is liberating. We live in a society that constantly encourages the escape from thought. We are surrounded by distractions, notifications, instant entertainment, and promises of quick happiness. Everything is designed to keep our minds occupied, but never turned inward. The pain of thinking is, therefore, a symptom of our human condition and of the ongoing attempt to avoid self-knowledge. Thinking hurts because it pulls us out of comfortable fantasies and confronts us with who we are, what we have done, and what we have failed to do. And there is a silent guilt that settles in many. The guilt of not having been better, of not having acted differently, of having been absent, of losing people, of having failed dreams, promises, and hope itself. But it is precisely this pain that points the way to healing. Stoicism, one of the most powerful schools of ancient philosophy, teaches that suffering is not in things themselves, but in our perception of them. Epictetus said, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them." This Stoic teaching shows us that the pain of thought is not only in life's facts, but in the interpretations we give to those facts. Loss in itself is an event. Suffering arises from what we do with that loss inside us. That is why thinking hurts, because thinking is to reinterpret. It is to revisit. It is, many times, to acknowledge one's own responsibility, even when we did not have full control. And that requires courage. The pain of thought is the pain of growth. No deep transformation is painless. Just as a body strengthens through physical exertion, the mind and soul strengthen through the confrontation of their own abysses. Stoicism does not preach coldness or indifference, as many mistakenly think. On the contrary, it invites us to embrace what we feel and, from that, to build an inner fortress based on reason, clarity, and virtuous action. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not over outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." It is in this principle that lies one of the greatest keys for those immersed in sadness, pain, or guilt. The power to change lies in how you choose to interpret and respond to what has already happened. Those who suffer deeply often believe their pain is unique, unshareable, and endless. And, in fact, each pain has its own particularity. But philosophy teaches us that we are not alone in the human experience of suffering. Throughout the centuries, millions of people have faced ethical dilemmas, grief, failures, and loss, and sought meaning even amid chaos. When someone decides to think seriously and honestly, they are joining a long lineage of truth seekers. And that is, in itself, inspiring, because it shows that it is possible to find light even within the darkest shadows. There is, however, a delicate point. Thinking too much without direction can become rumination. The difference between reflecting and ruminating is that reflection seeks understanding and growth, while rumination paralyzes, feeds guilt, and crystallizes pain. That is why thinking with purpose is essential. Thinking with guidance, based on principles like those of Stoicism, is the key that turns pain into wisdom. When one looks at a mistake with the intention of learning, and not just punishing oneself, the path to healing is already being taken. A practical example is when someone feels constantly guilty about a relationship that didn't work out. The mind returns to the past, repeatedly, revisiting conversations, decisions, and missed opportunities. That pain of thought, which seems unbearable, is the first sign that something valuable can be extracted from that experience. Instead of avoiding thought, Stoicism invites, ask yourself what was under your control and what wasn't. Ask yourself what you learned. Ask what kind of person you want to become from that experience. Thinking, in this case, is not merely reliving the pain. It is transforming it. Thinking hurts because it pulls us from the role of victim and calls us to responsibility. And taking responsibility is one of the most challenging and liberating tasks there is. The human mind was designed to learn, and every painful experience carries, at its core, a hidden lesson. When one thinks with courage and humility, one discovers that even the deepest mistakes can become springboards for a new consciousness. The philosopher Viktor Frankl, a survivor of Nazi concentration camps and founder of logotherapy, stated that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response, and in our response lies our growth and our freedom. Thinking, therefore, is that space, a pause between what happened and what we will do with it. The pain felt while thinking is the soul's resistance to transformation. But in that resistance lies strength. It is not by ignoring the pain that we heal. It is by going through it. Often, those who feel pain, sadness, or guilt believe they are failing. They think they should be stronger, happier, more stable. But Stoicism reminds us that emotions are not mistakes. They are signals. Signals that there is something inside that needs to be welcomed, understood, worked through. Ignoring this is like ignoring a fever. The body speaks, so does the mind. Thinking hurts because it reveals, and every deep revelation demands that we let go of old narratives. Sadness, when carefully considered, reveals values. It shows what truly matters. Grief reveals the love that once was. Guilt reveals the principles that were violated. Emotional pain is a guide, and thinking about it is the first step toward restoring balance. The Stoics taught that a good life is one lived in accordance with reason and nature. And human nature is, among other things, the capacity to learn, to adapt, and to rise. Therefore, when thinking hurts, know this: it is not a sign of weakness, but of depth. It is the pain of someone who refuses to live on the surface. It is the suffering of someone who is not satisfied with distractions. It is the effort of a soul that, even wounded, seeks meaning. And that search is sacred. Persisting in thought, even in the face of pain, is an intimate act of resistance. It is a stance against the escape and superficiality that so often try to anesthetize the soul. Thinking is like cleaning a wound. It hurts at first, but it is that process which prevents infection and opens the way for healing. Many avoid thinking not because they are weak, but because they were never taught how to deal with the depth of their feelings and the consequences of life. Modern society encourages a fragile relationship with suffering. We live in times of speed, ready-made answers, and immediate solutions for any discomfort. Silence, solitude, and introspection are often avoided or misunderstood. However, it is in that silent space where thought dwells that true emotional maturity is built. The pain that accompanies thinking is a kind of existential friction. It is the internal movement between who we were, who we are, and who we wish to become. The Stoics deeply understood this dynamic. They remind us that we should not fear pain, but rather understand it. Emotional pain, when faced with honesty, reveals paths. When we try to suppress difficult thoughts, they don't disappear. They just retreat into deeper layers of the unconscious, where they act even more destructively. Thinking, as painful as it may be, is a form of purification. It is a spiritual practice. It is a journey inward that allows the reconstruction of inner foundations. Many who live with guilt carry old weights, unresolved events, unspoken words, or actions they wish they had done differently. These thoughts, when not processed, become internal prisons. But when revisited with courage and purpose, they can become pillars of wisdom. Stoicism, contrary to what some believe, does not deny emotion, it disciplines it. It guides it. It teaches us that we are not slaves to what we feel, but that we can learn to govern our reactions. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and one of the greatest Stoic representatives, wrote in his journals, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." This thought, simple and profound, conveys an undeniable truth. The way we choose to think transforms the way we live. If we cultivate destructive, resentful, or catastrophic thoughts, our experience will be equally heavy. But if, even in pain, we seek clarity, meaning, and learning, our suffering becomes fertile. It is important to understand that thinking with pain is not a sign of emotional failure. It is, in fact, a sign of awareness. And awareness is the first step toward transformation. Imagine a field burned by fire. At first glance, everything seems destroyed. But over time, new seeds germinate, life is reborn, and the soil becomes even more fertile. So is the terrain of the mind when we think deeply. Past pains, when properly understood, become the soil for future wisdom. There is a crucial point to address. Most emotional pains do not disappear completely. They transform. They integrate into our story. They become part of who we are. And that is beautiful. It's not about erasing the past, but about reorganizing it within ourselves. Thinking is the tool for this reorganization. It's like rearranging an internal library. Some books will be removed, others reread, others relocated to different shelves. This work requires energy, patience, and often tears, but the result is liberating. Guilt, for instance, can become corrosive when it is not understood. The guilty person tends to relive past mistakes repeatedly, believing this is a fair form of punishment. However, Stoic philosophy teaches us that the past is beyond our control. Only the present belongs to us, and it is from the present that we can act wisely. Instead of torturing ourselves over past decisions, we can use them as a source of learning. It is not about denying responsibility, but about using it to grow. Thinking also hurts because it forces us to accept limits, to accept that we do not have control over everything, that not everything can be reversed, that not all wounds will receive external forgiveness. This acceptance is painful but also liberating, because by accepting what cannot be changed, we make room to focus on what is within our reach. Stoicism calls this the dichotomy of control, knowing how to distinguish between what depends on us and what lies outside our domain. This discernment is one of the most powerful tools for those who suffer. People in pain often try to control the uncontrollable. They try to change the past, to change other people's feelings, to find perfect explanations for tragedies. And this only prolongs suffering. By thinking with philosophical guidance, we learn to direct our energy where it can bear fruit. In present behavior, in daily choices, in cultivating virtues like patience, humility, courage, and wisdom. It is necessary, however, to recognize this is not an easy path. Deep thought is a narrow road, often lonely, that demands moral strength. But this journey leads to a serenity that no external distraction can offer. It is the serenity of one who, even in pain, finds meaning. And meaning is what sustains the soul. Without meaning, pain becomes unbearable. With meaning, it becomes transformative. It is not about romanticizing suffering, but about understanding it as an inevitable element of human life. And above all, about learning to navigate it with dignity. Stoicism is, in this sense, a firm guide. It does not promise easy happiness. It proposes inner strength. It reminds us that true freedom is not doing whatever we want, but wanting what we do, and that includes wanting to grow through pain. When we think with this mindset, scars come to be seen not as deformities, but as marks of battles won. Each painful thought, when processed with courage, becomes a brick in the construction of a more whole life. And it is this integrity that, in the end, generates peace. Philosophy is not a distant theory, made only for books and academics. It is, above all, a practice of life, a way of looking at oneself with more depth, more honesty, and more love. Thinking with pain is the beginning of a philosophical life. It is the awakening of a mind that no longer wants to live automatically, but essentially. By choosing to think, you are choosing to take responsibility for your journey. You are choosing to grow. You are choosing to live with more awareness. And that, no matter how painful it may seem at first, is one of the most liberating decisions a person can make. Keep thinking even when it hurts, because that is where your strength begins.